Good morning, Hank. It's Tuesday. The Men's World Cup starts in a few days. The only event that most people in the world are paying attention to at the same time. It's beautiful and confounding and corrupt, and today I am here to share with you one sentence about each of the 48 teams that qualified so that you will know what you're getting into. Alright, we're going to do this in reverse order of likelihood to win the World Cup as determined by, me. Curacao, the smallest nation ever to qualify for the World Cup, with a population about 1/10 the size of Indianapolis, is not going to win the World Cup, but they do have some of the best kits in the tournament. Haiti had some impressive qualification wins against Costa Rica and Nicaragua, even though they weren't able to play any of their home games at home due to political instability, but unfortunately they got stuck in a group with Brazil and Morocco. When FIFA recently expanded the World Cup to 48 nations, they were clearly hoping that nations with huge populations like China and India would qualify out of Asia, but instead, Jordan qualified for their first ever World Cup, which they aren't going to win, but they do have impressive wins recently against Saudi Arabia and Egypt, so don't overlook them. Iraq have made their first World Cup since 1986, thanks in part to former AFC Wimbledon superstar Ali Al-Hamidi, who scored a critical goal for them in qualifying, and if he can score a goal in the tournament itself, it will undoubtedly be the greatest World Cup moment in AFC Wimbledon history. New Zealand have Tim Payne, and with Tim Payne, all things are possible. Uzbekistan's men's team is called the White Wolves, but they have a tough group, so I don't expect them to get out of it. Qatar has a relatively easy group, but also probably still won't get out of it. World Cup debutantes Cape Verde have recent wins against Finland and Serbia, so they're definitely at the tournament on merit, and they might even get out of their group if they can beat Saudi Arabia, who will be looking to get out of their group for the first time since 1994, when of course the tournament was also hosted in North America. When Panama qualified for the World Cup in 2018, their president declared a national holiday, and it's incredibly impressive that they qualified in 2026, but I expect them to struggle, especially because their recent results have been poor. South Africa, who famously hosted the tournament in 2010, are back for the first time since then, and I don't expect them to win the World Cup, but I do think they're going to surprise a lot of people by winning a game. The Democratic Republic of Congo also won't win the tournament, but they do have a single fan who stands at attention for their entire matches, and it's worth watching the team just for the TV cutaways to that guy. Iran may well end up facing the U.S. men's national team in the second round of the tournament, and they will believe that they can upset the U.S. as they did back in 1998. Australia, known as the Socceroos, one of the best nicknames in the game, are not expected to win any of their games, but I actually think they will win one, possibly against the US, and then they're going to make the knockout rounds. Bosnia and Herzegovina beat Italy to qualify for this year's World Cup, and with 40-year-old Edin Dzeko still banging in goals, I believe that they will make the knockout rounds. South Korea have one of the great stars of global football, Sung Hyun-min, but they are on paper at least a little weaker than they have been in past tournaments. Tunisia don't have the star power of their North African neighbors Morocco, but they are known as the Eagles of Carthage, which is pretty badass. Another North African team to make the World Cup is Algeria, who just beat the Netherlands in a World Cup tune-up match. A reminder that football is not played by bookies or on spreadsheets, but instead by people on a football pitch. Paraguay are defensive-minded and tactically smart, but I'm unsure where their goals are going to come from, although that's also true for the other teams in their group, the US, Australia, and Turkey. The Black Stars of Ghana have an aging golden generation, but they did make the quarterfinals in 2010 and were one Luis Suarez handball away from making the semis, so you never know. Egypt have the legendary Mohamed Salah, through whom all things are possible. Canada have an annoyingly good team at the moment, and I say annoyingly because they already have universal healthcare, so being better than us at soccer feels a little punitive. Scotland fans like to sing "No Scotland, no party," and the Tartan Army will certainly bring the vibes at this year's World Cup, but with one of their star players injured, I'm not convinced they're going to bring the goals. Nearly half of all the players selected for the Czechia team play for the same club, Slavia Prague, and that kind of cohesion of playing together all year can be really good for a World Cup team. Austria have a good team with a stout defense, but they are extremely reliant on 73-year-old Marko Arnautovic to score goals, so we'll see how they do. Mexico are weaker than they have been in years, but it's hard to play against Mexico at home, and they've got a weak group, so I expect them to make the round of 16. The Ivory Coast men's national team just just beat France in a World Cup tune-up, so, like, who knows what's going to happen at this tournament? We are now about to enter the realm of teams that could theoretically win the World Cup, but before we do, we must address the issue of the U.S. men's national team, which is only up this high in the list because I am myself a USian and therefore engage in the deranged belief that the U.S. men's national team will somehow make the quarterfinals on home soil, despite having a coach they clearly dislike, and who also seems to dislike them. It would be a massive upset if Senegal won this year's World Cup, but they do have star players like Sadio Mane and Mamadou Sarr, and they will believe that they can beat anyone, and they're not necessarily wrong, even though they did just lose to the United States in a World Cup tune-up match. Sweden also have a fair amount of star power, but they did get spanked by Norway recently, and that worried me. Norway, meanwhile, has one of the world's best strikers in Erling Haaland, and I think will surprise some people in this tournament, and I'm not just saying that because I will be on vacation in Norway during part of the tournament. Uruguay have won the World Cup twice and are perpetual dark horse candidates to win it again, but I just don't think this is going to be their year. Croatia made the finals of the World Cup in 2018 and still have some of the same players they did back then, which is part of their problem, although they will believe that this aging golden generation can make one more run. I'm convinced that Turkey, having barely qualified for the tournament, will go on to beat the United States and win their group, but then they will run into the likes of Brazil or France. Switzerland tend to play somewhat uninspired but effective football that neutralizes their opponents, because they're neutral. Belgium will be wondering if they have wasted their golden generation of footballers, and I think this tournament will prove that yes, they have. Germany are pre-tournament favorites to at least make the quarterfinals, but I'm not even convinced they're going to win their group. In fact, I think their group will be won by Ecuador, who, with their stout defense, are one of my sleeper picks to go very far in the tournament, although eventually I think they will run into an unstoppable force called France. And now we get into my top 10 with a shout out to Japan, Samurai Blue, who should be very good this year, as evidenced by the fact they recently beat England. The Netherlands is probably the best footballing nation never to win the World Cup, and they'll believe they can go far this year with star players like Cody Gakpo and Virgil van Dijk, and presumably guys who don't play for Liverpool. In my opinion, Portugal are actually better when they don't play their aging superstar Cristiano Ronaldo, but I suspect they're going to play him anyway. In 2022, Morocco became the first African team ever to reach the semifinals, and they could repeat that trick again. Colombia is my dark horse pick to win the World Cup this year, with electrifying players like Luis Diaz and a wonderfully creative midfield. And then there is five-time winner Brazil, which has been very supportive of my books and is therefore one of my favorite national teams and could go really far in this tournament, partly because the expectations are for once at least a little bit lower on them. England won the World Cup in 1966 and haven't won it since then, and they have the players to do it this year, but will they be able to overcome the weight of expectation? Lionel Messi's Argentina, of course, won the World Cup last time out, and they will believe that they can win the World Cup again, not least because of their stalwart defense and their extraordinary goalkeeper. Kylian Mbappe will get all the headlines, but France is stacked in every position, and if they don't at least make the finals, this tournament will feel like a disappointment to them. And finally, there is Spain, with their rhythmic, metronymic football and their ridiculously talented player pool, which includes 18-year-old Lamine Yamal, who, if he's healthy, is poised to be the breakout star of this year's World Cup. So who's gonna win, Hank? I don't know, and anyone who tells you they do is lying, because the great thing about football is that it is full of surprises and narratives and miracles. But if you think you know who's going to win, you can participate in our podcast, The Away Ends Bracket Challenge, at awayendbracket.com, and if you win, you'll get a prize. Hank, God, I'm so excited for the World Cup. It's the once every 4-year jolt of joy that I need right now. I will see you on Friday.